Right. Hello and welcome. Happy Wednesday. We're going to give it just a minute as folks start to join us. Wonderful. I see people coming in. Feel free. Let's warm up to the chat. Share where you're joining us from today. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it one more minute to let folks join us. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Oh, I see Anita is from San Diego. Michelle from Boston. Yes. Bay Area is with us. Love to see it. Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay, this is a good group all over the place. Wonderful. San Diego. Westminster, Maryland. Welcome, Elizabeth. All right, well, I am going to get us started in the interest of time. We have a lot of great material to cover with our speaker today. So hello and happy Wednesday. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to this month's webinar, Prospecting in a Hybrid World. My name is Hannah Berger. I'm a fundraising consultant, executive coach, and principal of the Philanthropy Coach, which is a boutique consulting firm based in Los Angeles, California. I'm also a national trainer for the Fundraising Academy, and today I'm going to serve as your moderator. Before we get started, just a couple of notes. This webinar will be conversational, so that means you have the opportunity to ask questions both during the presentation as well as during a 30-minute Q&A following the presentation. We ask that you submit any questions you have in the Q&A option. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see two options. There's Q&A and then there's chat. The Q&A is for where you drop your questions for our speaker. And in the chat function, that is where you can make any comments about what's happening currently. And if you have any tech support needs, go ahead and drop them there also. Closed captioning is available for this webinar. To enable that setting, click the CC option in your Zoom controls. You can adjust your caption size in your video settings under accessibility. So in the days that follow this webinar, you will receive an email with a link to access the slide deck and a recording that you can review at your leisure. So a little bit about Fundraising Academy. The Fundraising Academy provides education and training to fundraisers throughout the US and beyond. Through online and in-person workshops, the Fundraising Academy trains emerging fundraisers to deepen relationships with donors through a cause-selling approach. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Christa Stoneham. Krista is a community development professional with over 15 years of experience. Ms. Stoneham understands and implements the leadership and stewardship needed to maximize neighborhoods' full potential. In January of 2022, Krista was appointed as the CEO and president of the Houston Land Bank to facilitate and fundraise equitable, transformational developments in Houston's most vulnerable and underestimated communities. Since its creation, the Houston Land Bank has reactivated more than $76 million worth of property. We are so excited to welcome her. Thank you for being here, Krista.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and to the Fundraising Academy. Thank you all for joining us from all over the country and some spaces outside of the country. My name is Christa Stoneham, and I'm so happy and honored to be with you here today. Today, we're here to talk about prospecting in a hybrid world. And in order to effectively identify prospects, you need, in order to thrive, you really need three things. One is to first qualify and prioritize your prospects so they can make the most meaningful impact to your mission. Two is you need to effectively use your database or your CRM tool to its greatest potential so you can identify the best prospect. And lastly, identify the best approach to connect with your donor. With these three steps, They're really the beginning of creating a meaningful and mutually beneficial donor relationship for you and your mission. But first, I want to know who's in the audience. We heard a little bit about where you're from. I would love to know a little bit about how many years of fundraising experience do you have? Thank you for pulling up the poll. So please fill it out. It'll be about 15 to 20 seconds until it closes. So please let us know. Oh, great. That's a good mix and diverse group. I love to see a mix of emerging and more medium term, and I would say definitely some veterans in the room. But I love the diversity and the mix of experience here today. I'm sure you all have great things that you've accomplished or accomplishing right now for this year in your respective spaces and need support to increase the impact. But regardless of how much experience you have, it's important to know who to talk to about your mission. What opportunities are available to connect with prospective donors? What creative approaches can create the most linkage, ability, and interest to the work that you do? This process of asking and answering these questions is called prospecting. And I'm going to emphasize it's a process. It's because it requires research and it's not a one and done approach to finding the right donor. And as much as I want to say and type into Google, who is the right donor for the Houston Land Bank? That level of analysis really, has to be done with a fundraising professional, which is why you're all here for the education, for the skill, and for the training. And trust me, you're in the right place. Now, there might be several people and prospects who could be a donor. For example, the mission of the Houston Land Bank is to comprehensively and holistically develop communities. So we have the capability of working on all types of projects and with all types of people here in our neighborhoods in Houston. But our priority for 2022 is to build more affordable housing. My qualified prospects are organizations and people who are in the government, who are in the construction industry, and who are donors who work in the home buying process. The Houston Land Bank is a government nonprofit, but we're also forming a 501c3. So we're uniquely positioned to work exclusively with public entities, the design community, construction manufacturers, and financial institutions, because these respective organizations have the characteristics and the contributions already aligned with the work that we do. I was able to identify these qualified prospects because they all have what you see here on the screen, the means to give. So for example, financial institutions have what's called CRA, which stands for Community Reinvestment Act dollars. That is a federal mandate. And we service low to moderate income areas. CRA dollars can only be used in LMI areas or low to moderate income areas, right? The second item, the ability to make the giving decision. Because once again, we're a governmental grant, there's all types of governmental grants available to us. But then going back to the financial institutions, they have the ability to make the giving decision because it's charged to them. It's a federal act. The third item speaks to the interest in your organization's mission. So at the Houston Land Bank, we were actually created by the city of Houston as a program back in 1999. The city has a long-standing commitment to our mission because they created it, right? The fourth item, an existing relationship with your organization, staff, or leadership. I'm pleased to say that once again, the city created us and we're in alignment with each other in terms of the impact that we bring. But I also still have board members who were there in '99 when the program was created, and they still have the relationships with the city staff who were a part of that creation. So in summary, a qualified prospect is applying a detailed screening process to each lead to increase your chances of successfully completing the ask. It will also help to establish a pattern to avoid wasting time calling leads that aren't viable prospects. And there are 10 techniques that will help you to streamline this process of identifying qualified prospects so you can produce the best results. Here you'll see a list of methods to determine how to prospect. And I strongly encourage you to focus on methods 1 and 2, which are referrals and influencers. Especially while we're in this hybrid world, it becomes more challenging to freely meet someone and just shake their hand. There's so many people here in Houston that I haven't seen in over 2 years that I was used to seeing on a monthly basis at different events. But the benefit of a hybrid world is the expansion of the brand and recognition of both myself and the organization. I would even say a hybrid world made it easier to network because everyone was home and online at the same time. I was able to gain referrals from donors, board members, from friends who all cared about our mission, especially during the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. Because we specialize, and especially me as a professional, in low to moderate income areas, 2020 brought a lot of new conversations in terms of social justice and equity. And people in Houston were focused and honed in on how to move the needle on equity forward in communities that we target. And my name kept coming up in referrals and different influencers that I've met over time. In terms of online platforms, such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, even Google Meet, it made it easier for someone on the other side of the country, such as today, and executives who were more readily available since everyone was on their computers for most of the time. I attended a plethora of webinars and online conferences without having to leave my living room or go into traffic. I was able to speak on several panels about the equity work I was leading, which was a great opportunity to expose myself to more people who wanted to know about the work and how to get involved. Numbers 4 and 5, direct and social media marketing, speaks to directly creating lists of businesses and individuals you can target via mail, email, or social media. Tools that are also innovative and creative and eye-catching, such as Reels on Instagram and TikTok videos, also quickly create a stronger online presence and for information sharing. Because instead of just looking at the picture and reading the content during your scroll, you're more inclined to pause and play that video to see what is that quick snippet of information. Item 6, warm calling, which is basically means you're reaching out to someone without making an appointment first, can be beneficial. But I would also say that networking platforms such as LinkedIn or Twitter have also been beneficial in my experience. You can increase your network based on the interest or who you follow, and you can also create direct messages to the executives or the staff, which is helpful because mostly the information goes directly to their phone. Techniques 8 through 10 really speak to your online presence, whether from a pre-assembled prospect list or a newsletter on your respective website, or crowdfunding, which can help to leverage your own online network, but work best for funding specific short-term projects or campaigns with a sense of urgency. Creating an online presence means you need to create user-friendly options, simple language and graphics, and really hone in on the specific initiatives and messaging. So in short, in my opinion, regardless of which method you choose, especially if it's in this virtual world, it really stems down to being present and being active. If you're going to join an online meeting or an event, turn on your camera if you're able to do so. Express interest in your tone of your voice or in the messages of your email, in the chat, in the messages, and ask great questions. even though we haven't been able to physically be in the same room sometimes, some of the common elements when it comes to relationship building are still the same. How are you showing up and how are you following up? Whether it's on your website, it's on your social media, it's a referral, it's an email, it's a webinar, the tone matters and who you are matters. But you have to take the time to introduce yourself, your mission, and listen to people's responses. But I'll cover that a little bit later in the presentation. So like I said earlier, referrals are one of the most powerful techniques in fundraising because people are more open to your organization and to you if someone that they know and respect sends you. But you can't be afraid to ask for help. I recently just met with one of my board members who has over 30 years of banking experience about my aspiration to connect more with financial institutions. And she was more than willing to refer me to several contacts. But I would also add that this board member is not just referring me to people and sharing contact information. She's also a strong influencer here in Houston. She's going to actually help bring me to the table to meet with the different CEOs and executives from these respective banks as a fundraiser to discuss the alignment of the work that we do with the accomplishments they would like to see for the year. But I'll also add that influencers, especially if they're your board members, can even help to potentially build your strategy or your pre-approach when talking to the donor because they want to see you succeed. So you need to identify who your centers of influence are, who are the people that feel good about your cause and about you. And lastly, who has a great network that would be aligned to your mission?
Krista,
Yes.
can I jump in real quick? So many
Please.
great insights. Thank you. This is great. Megan asked a clarifying question about warm calling. She asks, is warm calling just a more pleasant way to think about cold calling? You mentioned it as calling someone out of the blue without a pre-scheduled appointment. Is it calling a referral or calling cold?
That's a great question. I would say it is about the tone of what you're saying when you do reach out. I do have a little more detail later in the conversation about steps to take when you are making the call. So I understand the context in terms of cold versus warm. And in a sense, it is, related, but it is more intentional, which is why it's called warm, because you do have a strategy and a script and certain benchmarks that you want to accomplish, which I'll dive in a little bit deeper. But Hannah, did you want to add anything else?
Sure. I mean, when I think of warm calling, the difference between a warm call and a referral is that referral has already done all of the heavy lifting for you. Whereas with a warm call, it's not necessarily that you're completely out of the blue starting from zero. There's some sort of knowledge there. So perhaps your name has been shared or someone told you to give someone a call and it was a very casual sort of exchange, but you're not starting from zero, right? So it's a cold call would be calling out of the blue, getting somebody who's not expecting you. They don't know who you are, what you do, your organization, right? A warm call is you're already at the next stage. They've heard of you or your organization. They're perhaps anticipating a call, but it might not be scheduled. That's kind of the way I discern them.
No, definitely. And I also add, and because you've done all this great prospecting and research, you're not cold. You know who you're talking to, you know what that linkage, ability, and interest is. And that's why it's warm, because you are prepared. So I think that's a great transition to go into our community share. I would really love to know more about how has prospecting changed or stayed the same in this hybrid world for you. I spoke a little bit about some examples and which method of prospecting has been the most successful for you in your organization. And you can feel free to put that in the chat.
Folks are typing away. I
Okay.
could share one from an organization that I've been involved with a very long time that I'm currently consulting with. They typically do really robust programming with volunteers and donor groups, in particular their corporate partners around the holidays. But of course, in 2020, we were in Los Angeles, still very much locked down. So they really leaned into crowdfunding and creating these opportunities to let those corporate groups do competitive team-based fundraising. And they found that all of these donors that had been involved through their corporations previously, but didn't directly share their contact information, were now giving directly, and therefore they had direct access to them, their networks. And I think they added about 900 new supporters in December of 2020. So it was, a really hot method for them that year. Let's see what else we have in the chat. Megan shared referrals via board members has been really great for them. Michelle says, I think the absence of in-person events has really hurt our ability to connect with new corporate partners. Let's see, our new corporate partners. We've definitely been relying more on referrals from existing partners. Great. New to prospecting during the COVID world. So everything has needed to be intentional referrals by someone, usually a board member or volunteer. We also turned to Classy as of last year. That's that crowdfunding platform. Great. Referrals from board, alumni correspondence, tapping donor management, wealth screening software. Thank you, George.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. Absolutely, referrals are absolutely number one. So I like to say a quote from one of my coaches, which is, you can't manage what you don't measure, which to me means it goes back to your database, right? Your database is extremely important when it comes to budgeting and planning for the year, but also your priorities. Of course, all the donors are extremely important. I know they're important to me, but you have to prioritize your time and your capacity. So you should really focus on prospects who you already have adequate information on. And here are 3 examples here. The first example is speaking to renewed donors who haven't given consecutively, who have given consecutively, but haven't increased the amount. This is a great opportunity to discuss how to upgrade the donor to a new level. The second example are reactivated donors, which means they were dormant at some point in time and have renewed their commitment. This could be another opportunity to re-engage and upgrade to a new level and to know the donor better. The last example are new donors who may have given a smaller amount because they maybe haven't had much interaction with the organization and you don't know them. And this is once again another excellent opportunity to introduce yourself and to leave a great impression and a long-lasting relationship. A great example that I thought of with the Houston Land Bank is a donor who told me they tried to work with the organization about 3 years ago. Of course, this was prior to my leadership and involvement. And when I reached out to them via email expressing interest, they responded with excitement. But in the meeting, they made a comment about lack of follow-up from prior leadership and that time. And that was really my opportunity to let them know how passionate I was about the work and about working with them. And it was also a great indicator to me that I needed to be sure that I was proactive about communicating with them on a regular basis. And I'm happy to say about a couple weeks ago, we co-hosted an event together. And I was happy to say that the donor publicly thanked me, myself, and the team for being so engaged and committed to the work. And I've been in this role for about 3 months, but I ultimately prioritized my time and my resources on the relationships that the organization already had. And that's what generated the fruitful results a couple weeks ago in that scenario that I explained. Because finding new donors is extremely time and resource intensive. So if you can access your database with information that tells you which of your past donors are more likely to give, you can see which donors might be likely to give even more. Class B and C prospects are those about whom you have incomplete information, or people whose names you have found in some way, but about whom you have little to no information about other than a name. You might have enough information to be sure they're aware of your cause or the potential of their gifts, such as serving the same zip code or neighborhood in my instance, or their financial support via an event. And the key for this group of prospects is to do more research. Try to find what they value most and really tailor your research to look for the decision maker of the organization or look into the motivation. Once again, the Houston Land Bank focuses on community development, and we have specific communities that we serve here in Houston, but they're mostly all low to moderate income areas. So there's some areas that we may not serve yet, but we're definitely looking for opportunities there. And when we work with our different potential partners and donors, I really look for opportunities, and sometimes it's a social media post or an article that serves one of the areas. And then I'll dive deeper into that respective organization to really see who are some of the financial institutions who are passionate about some of the projects or the park improvements or housing. And these are really important leads to help me qualify them to determine if they're true prospects and if they have the financial capability to make a meaningful gift. But I still need to do more research to see who's the decision maker and if my board or my network is able to connect more with information in order to connect and communicate with that donor, which is what we spoke to a little bit in the chat. Okay, so let's say you did all your research, you did all your homework, you want to continue. And I'm going to continue with that example of the board member who will be introducing me to the banks. My board member was able to provide me some helpful insight on what I need to do to prepare for my first meeting, and I'll be following up with that board member to ensure I'm on the right track. But the key to prepare you for that meeting is really you need to prepare for the approach with the donor. And this is what's called the pre-approach, or basically planning and preparing to contact your prospective donor. The pre-approach is the method to provide the most critical information you need to qualify prospects before meeting with them. And this is not making the ask at that meeting. This is reaching out to introduce yourself and to begin the process of building the relationship. This is really just contacting them so you can get on their calendar, which I'll speak a little to in a little bit. The pre-approach is building your strategy to understand the context and the culture of the organization you're approaching. Your goal is to understand the prospect's needs and feelings about your nonprofit. This is a checklist called the Preapproach Checklist to help you gather the information you need before you make the call to the donor. You have to really get to the heart of why the people give. You need to get to their passion. I wouldn't use this as a literal checklist as you're talking to them like it's a job interview. It's really having a genuine conversation to understand the person and the professional. What are their interests? What are they passionate about? And this is all really helpful information for your discussion, because sometimes it's good to have a nice icebreaker or a commonality to tie. And whether you went to the same college or you have a mutual contact, this goes back to preparing for the warm call, right? You're not going in there cold because you took the time to find out the answers to these questions. And I'll also give another example is sometimes it can be an example such as, a book or an article that you read that was relevant to a situation that I was in recently with a lapsed donor. I met with them maybe about a year and a half ago. in that conversation, I remembered we were discussing a book that recently came out in 2020. I recently purchased that book. I went through it. And when I saw the lapsed donor, I reminded him of that conversation. And literally his face lit up because he remembered that connection, that linkage that we had about revitalization in Houston, which was what the book was about. That helped to open the door to the conversation about what the donor was passionate about. And I was able to gather even more information from the donor about what truly motivates them. But going back to the quote, you can't manage what you can't measure. It's really important to document the components, different contact information for the donor so you know how to approach them, which are here on the screen. Of course, you need to know their contact information, their phone number, the cell versus office, just those basic contact information. But also, if you're able to gather additional demographic information and preliminary information, once again, about the person, then you can really find out, how do you filter your referrals, right? Making sure you're documenting that information. What is that linkage and interest of the prospective prospect? But keep in mind, you're creating a strategy for your audience. Your approach for a reactivated donor is not going to be the same for a new donor. So for example, if I'm working with a donor who cares about workforce development, for example, I'm going to prepare for that meeting by giving them data about who we are working with and impacting in terms of small businesses. I'll have the percentages of how many minority-owned versus women-owned businesses that we work with, for example. And in comparison, if I have a donor who cares about flood resiliency, I would speak more to the percentage of lot coverage and impervious surface, or maybe sustainable construction materials to reduce the carbon footprint of our homes. So I want to open it up again to hear a little bit from you. You heard some examples from me in terms of how I approach prospects, et cetera. So what do you and your organization do to prepare for approaching a prospect? And how has this changed or stayed the same in the past 2 years? And Hannah, if you would like to jump in with any examples, I'm more than welcome your input as well.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to read out responses as they start to come in the chat. Things that have changed in the last 2 years. I think the biggest shift for a lot of my clients that I work with is, the ability to say, let's meet for a cup of coffee just kind of disappeared. Although that became a regular practice via Zoom, right? And I think a lot of folks found that since we were forced to rely so heavily on whatever we could find digitally, getting really good at that internet research, whether it be via free resources, using Google, or paid platforms, became imperative to train up not only the lead fundraiser in a lot of organizations, but the entire development team. I'm curious, Krista, about your development team at Houston Land Trust, how you sort of delegate out prospect research. Is there a primary person responsible for it, or does everyone take a piece of the pie?
No, great question. We're working on creating a designated person. So for now, sharing is caring. We all have a different component, whether it's one person who's really honed in on acquisitions, like who would be passionate about helping us acquire more land, or another team member is looking more into the construction materials. Definitely have different layers of how we impact and we develop. Some of it is more people-based, some of it's policy, some of it's project, and we break it up accordingly amongst the team and their responsibilities.
That's great, thank you. I see Joanne has her hand up. Katie, do you want to unmute Joanne so she can ask her question directly? Let's see. Joanne, did you have a question? Oh, maybe not. Well, let's see what came in the chat. Jennifer said a triage list of new donors and increased givers for us to call and thank and have qualification conversations with. Excellent. Julie said that they prepare profiles for donors and discuss with staff, board, and volunteers who will join the meeting. That's great. The profile now includes how they like to connect, call, Zoom, or an outdoor meeting. In the midst of a campaign, George says, using wealth screening, focusing on recency, frequency of gifts, and donation level over time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Well, in my opinion, regardless of pre or post-pandemic, it's crucial to set the meeting in the right way. So of course, you want to think about the timing, not just the time of the day or the right time during the week. I also look into the time of the year. So for example, here in Houston this week is spring break. So I'm not anticipating any major meetings or anyone reaching out to me. I'm not going to reach out to them. I also look into when does school start? Or is it a holiday weekend? And people might be traveling with their families. I really try to think once again about the person and about the professional. For example, if one of your prospective donors is passionate about hunting, for example, now I'm not exactly sure when hunting season is, but I'm definitely going to look it up so I can be sure not to bother them during that time. Or I might need to talk to them about, getting some deer sausage or something for a family dinner, right? These are the type of conversations you can spark up going back to your prospective donors and the research that you do, but also just tying in some real life examples about the timing. Some prospects also like to, meet in the morning. Some are really morning people. They may want to, meet at 8, 7 o'clock, while others may want to kind of get through their work day first, and you're going to meet after hours or in the afternoon. The best way to discover is simply really by asking, because everyone has their own preference. In a hybrid world, the location is really one of the most important elements. We all talked about how not being in person has really impacted our engagement with our donors. And I always leave it up to the donor whether they would like to meet virtually or in person. I'll say here in Texas, definitely, I know there's different COVID protocols, I'm not going to give my opinion on it, but definitely Houston businesses have been open for some time during the pandemic. So some people are comfortable with meeting in person. But once again, I leave that preference to the donor to let me know what their comfortability level is like. But if the meeting is in a virtual meeting, whether it's on Zoom or whatnot, I also take into consideration as an executive that sometimes you're literally in back-to-back meetings. So what I'll do is sometimes schedule the meeting with that prospective donor, typically maybe 5 to 15 minutes before or after the hour, because they just need a time because sometimes a meeting might go over, or sometimes you just need to take a sip of water before you join the next call. I really try to think about different scenarios that my donor may be experiencing in that moment. Before the pandemic, I'm pretty sure we all were going directly to their offices. But once again, in a hybrid world, and a Houston example is a lot of people want to meet outside. They want to meet on a patio somewhere. Definitely right now we're having beautiful weather out here. I'm pretty sure we're having a lot of coffee meetings and on different patios in respective spaces. And I'll also say, just in terms of the culture here in the South, is we meet over food. Houston is the restaurant capital, and we have so many different options and locations here. But definitely just think about, the culture and the context of the different space that your donor may want to experience. But one thing that's essential, regardless of if it's in person or online, is knowing who the executive assistant is or the gatekeeper. right? Because they're the ones that schedules the meeting the majority of the time. This person can help you plan for the best day and time your donor will support you. So the gatekeeper is a part of the relationship building process as well, because typically an executive doesn't manage their own calendar. Now, you heard I'm a CEO and president, and I'll be honest, I am an interesting case study because I'm a combination of a fundraiser, an executive, and a funder for the construction community here in Houston. But I manage my own meetings because sometimes I refer people to my gatekeeper based on who they are and why they want to meet. Because I'm an architect and a planner as well, I outline my priorities for the week, for the month, for the quarter, and for the year. I know these are all, similar project management strategies that you all experience as well. And if someone wants to meet with me, I need to know what's their agenda and the time, and that my time is valued in this meeting, which really goes back to, once again, who they are and why do they want to meet? Because I can tell when an applicant has done their homework or not. For example, someone reached out one time saying they wanted to meet with me, and they almost made it, sound like it was urgent. So, I made 10 to 15 minutes just to touch bases, and they were talking to me about, in the perspective as if I was a bank. Literally, I know, our organization is called the Houston Land Bank, but we do not accept deposits of people's, paycheck stubs. We deposit land, right? So I instantly knew you didn't do your homework. You didn't read the website. You didn't do any research. You just reached out directly to me requesting a meeting, right? So once again, depending on their rapport, right? And how you're communicating out to the gatekeeper, to the respective person to schedule that meeting. I might refer them next week. I might wait a few weeks, or I might refer them to a staff member, depending on the scenario and how they asked. Because the gatekeeper's job is to protect and conserve the time of their superiors by determining who gets in and when. Here are some tips on how to connect with the gatekeeper. In my opinion, the best way is to be yourself, be authentic, be forthcoming about what you hope, who you are, what you want to accomplish, and why you're reaching out to this particular donor, right? Because you should be able to sell the cause that you're hoping to accomplish, because this donor brings that extra, that extra need to the table. It helps to really impact, and together you guys will make a great collaboration, right? And speaking in those type of exciting terms and phrases will help excite people, and it will encourage the gatekeeper to want to schedule that meeting. They ultimately, once again, are helping to determine who gets in and when. And if they know that their superior is in alignment with the things that you're saying, they can help stress the importance of that meeting to that respective executive. But it also helps to remember their name, right? Definitely the administrative assistants of the world, to me, get all the flowers, because that is a delicacy that is not necessarily my specialty, even though I manage my own calendar. But don't be disingenuous, right? And of course, be patient, because sometimes people may overlook an email, or the calendar might be booked for the next 3 weeks. Typically, when I'm in a meeting with someone new, I schedule them out maybe 3 weeks out, because I've already accounted for my priorities for the month. Once again, I've already scheduled out what I need to work on for the next 2 weeks. So once again, just be patient, and of course, say thank you. But I'll also say, as another side tip that isn't on the screen, is it doesn't hurt to know when National Admin Day is. Now, don't go overboard and make it seem like you're trying to, by someone, right? But I do believe that over time, as you build the relationship with your donor, you build the relationship with their staff, right? And those types of appreciation opportunities is really a great opportunity to really just acknowledge the person who's typically the glue of the organization, which is the gatekeeper. They can really advocate for you when you're not in the room. So this is going to speak to a little of the question about the cold versus warm calling. Once again, it's never cold because you were prepared. You brought your coat, right? You have your scarf. You have everything you need to make sure that you are prepared for this meeting. So once again, all the tactics and tips and techniques are really to prepare you for this pre-approach meeting. And once again, this meeting is not to secure the gift. This meeting isn't to make the ask. This meeting isn't to, get into your pitch deck. This is the meeting to schedule your face-to-face meeting. And whether that face-to-face meeting is virtual or it's in person, once again, it's being prepared to have the phone call to explain why this meeting is important and why the executive and donor should meet with you. So there's 6 steps. Step 1 speaks to the importance of introducing yourself and your organization. And once again, I can't stress enough that it's so important to introduce yourself as a person and a professional. It's great to read off your mission statement, to give your one-pagers, this, that, and whatnot. But in order to really prioritize why they should be meeting with you, you really need to stress who you are, right? And be authentic in that ask. And sometimes it's good to have a script. I definitely encourage it, especially in the beginning, when you have to introduce yourself, especially if you don't have a referral from a board member. And even if you do, it's still great to have that script because maybe you can put in some of the notes that were important by the person that referred you. So that's step 1, introduce yourself, introduce the organization. Step 2, it's really important to me as an executive because I prefer, to be honest, not to be called if it's not scheduled, because I usually have so much planned out for my day and my week to what's called take the curse off of the call. And basically that means simply acknowledging that you may or may not be calling during a convenient time, right? Definitely if someone calls me and I'm unable to answer, I'm in a meeting, most of the time I can't respond, but I might, call them back when I have a small break just to make sure that there is no urgent matter. But most of the time I will return the call, definitely when there is a time to connect. But what really helps soften that phone call that they're not going to be expecting is to simply ask, is this a convenient time for you to speak? Right? Just ask them as a courtesy. Definitely down here in the South, once again, we have, our curtsies and whatnot. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it definitely is good to let them know as a courtesy that you appreciate that they answered the phone, right? That you're speaking to them and you really have a better chance of being heard just by acknowledging that they didn't have to answer, right? And they may not have the rest of the time to continue the conversation. But let's assume in step 3 that they do have the time to speak. So you really want to follow up with a brief statement about why you're calling, but really give some excitement into it, right? Whether it's, an invitation to event that you're hosting and you have, potentially some, VIP tickets or whatnot, right? It's something that's definitely not going to be unemotional. You need to generate some excitement about the need to speak, right? And step 4 is talking about making, once again, an interesting statement in your conversation with this person, right? You want to be sure that it's tailored to the donor Definitely, it shouldn't be a copy paste type of language where you have this same script and it's kind of like the people who somehow have your cell phone who robo-dial you and they're all, asking you whether they, can purchase your property or whatever that ask is, right? Because once again, you did the research, right? This is a warm call. This is something that you prepared for and knowing who you're speaking to and why. Right. And because you already had your script and some of the notes that you take, right? This is once again an interesting capturing statement. And you know the interest because you already did the homework before you called. The fifth step, now obviously this is making the calendar invite. It's requesting that appointment, that meeting. And the goal is to secure that appointment so you can make the presentation at a later date. Now, don't make your pitch over the phone. Don't, once again, get into the details about really, the best way to, for example, invest, $100,000 to create down payment assistance programs for 100 people, right? For example, you don't want to get into the weeds of that particular ask. And lastly, step 6 is, depending on, who you're speaking to, hopefully, you don't have to get here, but realistically, there may be some resistance to scheduling that meeting, is to really have a conversation as to what is that hesitancy, right? Because you want to have a conversation with the person, even though we're recommending that you provide and you, create a script so you're prepared for the conversation. This is really saying that you need to be a good listener and have an authentic conversation, because maybe, it's literally the wrong time, even though they said yes, they can take the call. Maybe they're multitasking, right? The best solution is to be persistent and be pleasant. And maybe, you follow up and request another check-in call in a couple weeks. Really, you have to really be fluid to see how can you build a solution with them to get to that meeting. So that's definitely going back to being authentic, being present, the tone of your voice, the pitch of your voice, right? Really just being present, and also, just having a good smile and an attitude really goes a long way. So in summary, prospecting in a hybrid world is really meeting with the right people in the right way, at the right time, at the right location, which really means you have to prioritize your prospects and create that pre-approach for your time. That once again, there's so many people that I'm sure want to work with you, but really sitting down, creating that strategy, that approach, that team, the interest of where this particular donor might be in terms of events or speaking engagements. Definitely that is key in qualifying the right prospect for your work. I also believe, just overall as a professional, just the statement that is a failure to plan is a plan to fail, right? You need to sit down and do the homework and do the work. So don't be afraid to practice or get feedback on your pre-approach calls and your scripts or your emails to request the meeting. Definitely that's what your board and the influencers are there for. Once again, they want to see you succeed. And remember, the purpose of the pre-approach call, whether it's face-to-face or on Zoom, is to really get the buy-in of the prospect and not to make the ask. It's really beginning that relationship building process, because it really takes time to get to know the person and the professional. But because you already did the background work, you already began finding, once again, the linkage, the ability, and the interest, you've already put in half the battle. And lastly, using the script and using the 6-step telephone track system will really help to make sure you're on the right track and on the right page to, once again, locking in that meeting so you can explain yourself more on why this is an amazing opportunity for the donor to work with you. So we're going to get ready to open it up for the Q&A discussion. I'm going to give you some time to start filling out the Q&A section of Zoom, which is on the bottom of your screen. I see we have one already in play, but also just wanted to again thank you to the Fundraising Academy for having me, and please continue to register and subscribe for more updates for our webinar series. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic on to Hannah.
Thanks, Krista, so much. I really loved all of the your insights and the real world examples. It was really outstanding. We're so glad you could be here today. So folks, as you're typing those questions up, just a friendly reminder that the slide deck and recording will be sent in the next few business days via email. So you all have that available to you to review again at your leisure. For more information on Fundraising Academy, as Krista said, all of our live webinars and a full list of on-demand videos are on our website. So don't miss our next webinar, which is April 20th, Donor Conversations in a Hybrid World. That's part 2 of what we're working on today. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat for you if you are interested in registering for our next session on April 20th. And with that, let's see what kind of questions we have. So Megan says, thanks, Krista. I'm so interested in this warm call method of outreach. Would you be willing to offer a role play of what this call might sound like?
Oh, okay. I'm like, Hannah, are you?
Do you want to be the fundraiser and I'll be the prospect?
Sure. I'm just like, oh, wow. I'm just trying to think of a scenario on the spot because obviously I haven't done my homework, but I do feel warm about what we do and what the organization is about. So sure, let's do it.
Right. Hello.
Hi, this is Krista. I'm the president and CEO of the Houston Land Bank. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Is this a good time to talk right now? I understand, it's a little bit past lunch. Just wanted to make sure that I'm acknowledging that you may or may not be available to chat for a few minutes.
Oh, I appreciate that. I have about 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, definitely, I'll be brief. I want to respect your time. Once again, my name is Christa Stoneham. I'm with the Houston Land Bank, and I'm really excited to reach out to you today. I found your information after speaking to a board member about community development. They highly recommended I speak to you about this exciting project that we're bringing to a neighborhood called Setagas. It's on the Northeast area, and we are about to kick off our capital campaign in order to build hundreds of homes for all types of housing housing typologies. We're going to target some low to moderate income. We'll have some market rate. And they said this is something that you are extremely passionate about, and I should absolutely reach out and schedule some time with you in order to discuss this more. Is this something that you would be potentially interested in?
Absolutely is. And if this was a real world scenario, I'd probably ask you exactly who that board member was that referred me, because you are spot on. This is something that I'm really interested in getting more involved with.
Absolutely. Well, definitely Lori and I will be at the meeting. I'm going to follow up with you via email to discuss the best time. So thank you so much for your time. I definitely want to let you get back to you doing your work. But in the meantime, please be on the lookout for my email.
Wonderful. Thank you, Krista. I look forward to meeting you.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Megan, way to put us on the spot.
Right? I was like, I took acting like at 13. That's probably as far as I got though, but thank you.
Megan also asked, this is another great question. She's curious, how long should the whole call take? So what we just did there, I think is pretty accurate, right? It's pretty quick. And what's your percentage success rate of getting the in-person meeting out of a warm call?
Oh, good question. Megan, I'm like, I gotta meet her one day. She's fun. So yes, you saw the scenario where I asked, how much time do you have, right? Because then that lets me know how much can I say? Do I just need to get straight to the point? Is there a couple more hints I can drop in that might excite them, right? But I do agree 5 to 15 minutes. That's max 15 minutes in my opinion. And in terms of success rate, I have an extremely high rate of just introducing myself. I tend to be a very colorful person and bubbly, and especially not being originally from Houston or the South. I'm actually from the Bay Area. All of my contacts have been warm calls and introductions and meetings and emails. So I would say about 90%. I think it's just, once again, just being authentically yourself. I definitely am like this in real life in terms of just my engagement and excitement. And I think that has been beneficial for me. But Hannah, do you have anything you want to add from that?
I just kind of got lost in what you're saying about just showing up as authentically you, and it shows that you're a Bay Area girl. So I would just add, a couple of things that come to mind when I teach this for Fundraising Academy is I love to walk through the script, but also be prepared just in case the person says, well, actually, I've got some time now. Tell me about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're definitely not going to go right into an ask, but definitely you want to be prepared to pitch, if you will, and kind of share your elevator speech that you have about your organization. So I just want to give that hint. But yeah, that was great. I would definitely take a meeting with you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. Julie has a question. She asked, can you talk more about a qualifying call to a lapsed or $500 plus donor?
Okay, so the 500 plus donor was the scenario that was about a new person. And I assume that if someone's giving, a gift, they have just enough information to feel like they should support you. But that scenario was also saying that they really haven't had a conversation with someone, right? They're giving a gift because there's something in writing, whether it's, your crowd fund or whatnot. But I would look more into that particular donor and see if there's more information you can find out of why they made that gift and maybe why they gave a smaller amount, right? There could be a scenario, for example, where maybe it was just the time of the year, or like I said, it was just not enough information to feel more comfortable to make, I'll just say 50,000, for example. So I would dig a little deeper before, but definitely if you haven't talked to them at all, that's a great opportunity to personally thank them and to really start building that relationship because they just didn't know them. And the lapse donor, I kind of gave an example of someone who worked with our respective organization, but they were honest with me and told me why things didn't come into fruition, right? So that was my opportunity to authentically let them know, well, I'm definitely someone who authentically shows up. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. And if for some reason, things change or shift, then I will be transparent and forthcoming about that, right? But that was literally our first meeting and they were kind of like, okay, well, I tried to work with y'all before. And I had to let them know. I understand and I appreciate that feedback, but this is me. This is Krista. This is definitely a new day and I welcome the opportunity to move forward on the agenda and it worked that way. So do you have anything you want to add?
Just to piggyback on what you said about, reaching out to lapsed donors, be prepared to potentially apologize for bad behavior of your predecessor, but that can be a really powerful opportunity to build trust. I've definitely been there. I think anyone who's been in fundraising, long enough, you've experienced the disappointment of donors who have taken a break or walked away, and they come back after they've expressed their sort of, disappointment in what happened before. So just know that if that's the position you find yourself in, if you show up and you follow through, it's almost like you expedite building a really trusting relationship. So it can be really good.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
I actually have a question for you, Krista. You were talking, I love the quote. I wrote it down. You can't manage what you can't measure.
yes.
And I know that as a chief development officer and a director of development previously, it was always a little tricky to get our CEO to divulge all of the notes that would come out of meetings that perhaps they attended on their own, right? Without myself present. So I'm curious, you've been a fundraiser, you're a CEO. What are your tips for sort of managing up in terms of making sure all of that good prospecting information gets into our systems?
Good question. And definitely I've been there where my, successor at the time when I was, more of a staff member would have a great meeting, or you help prepare for that pitch, right? But you don't really know what happened. What was the conversation like afterwards? What I do is I definitely make good notes. I take good notes, and I'll also immediately share them with my team. Now, sometimes I'll have a direct point person who I know is going to be the implementer. And I might just have a quick debrief call, especially if it's fresh on my mind. But then I'll follow up in writing to that prospective donor to make sure I captured the notes correctly and the deliverables. And then, of course, that's when I bring in the staff to talk about, if there's a specific task we need to work on or a deadline. And we also have our own project management system that we use for our internal tracking of work. So definitely I bring them along the whole process. Sometimes I might bring them if it's, a larger space, just so they can see the fruits of their labor. I definitely believe in my staff presenting their own work when appropriate and when it's, they're able to. I definitely want to be sure that the whole team is represented in the work that we do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get a question. I'm teaching a cohort right now for Fundraising Academy yesterday that I'd love to throw at you and get your insights as a new transplant, good Southern woman who's got great manners, I'm sure. So one of my students said, because of COVID, I'm suddenly really apprehensive about shaking hands or hugging people, right? We're starting to get back out there and have in-person meetings and going to events. And they wanted to know, how do I handle this? Like, what's the best way to do this without, alienating my prospects?
Definitely. Great question. And I think the answer is to ask the comfortability of who you're speaking to. Definitely, I'm a hugger. I think that's also a thing here in the South. Definitely in California growing up, that was kind of like, why are you getting closer to me? But here in the South, hugging is a handshake in a sense. And some people naturally still do it, and that they're coming from a good place, even it may not be a safe place, right? So it's sometimes just hi, especially if it's someone new, right? It's introducing yourself. Hi, and are you comfortable with shaking hands? Right? Now, it sounds like the person who asked is not comfortable, right? So sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a gesture with my hand, right? Because I'm not really trying to shake many people's hands too, but I also gauge depending on kind of the situation. Of course, I keep my sanitizer with me at all times and a mask and et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes what I'll do is oh, thank you so much, right? Like it's my body language, it's the gesture, I'll try to smile and you can see the smiles, right? And oh, hi, my name is Krista. I'm so excited to see you, or just something to do with my hands to help show that gesture. Definitely there was, a time period where people were doing elbows, right? I saw somebody do something with their wrist. Kind of it's an interesting icebreaker sometimes of what's your gesture of how you introduce yourself. But definitely I would probably try to make your own gesture of showing that gratitude for meeting them, right? And then, of course, kind of, seeing the response, but most of the time it's fine because people know. They definitely don't take it personal. But hi, my name is Krista, and just continue, again, or, just something with your hands, I think helps.
I love that. It's an ever evolving landscape, but thank you for modeling it so beautifully.
Thank you.
We do have a few more minutes. So if there's any other questions you have for Krista, and I will offer about the content she went through today or anything else you might want to know. Having somebody who's been both a fundraiser and a CEO, I mean, that's a really rare treat. So I encourage everybody to jump in there in the Q&A. I will pose one more question to you, Krista. I'm curious, we've talked a lot as of late about doing events via Zoom and how that really shifts both the pre-event prospecting research we might do, and then also how we follow up, what procedures we put in place. Can you share anything that you've instituted at your organization that you think is just a really tremendous sort of tool for our toolkit?
Are you saying in terms of not necessarily the promotion, but you're saying just identifying the potential participants?
Yeah, getting to know who's in the room and then how you follow up with them.
Oh, yeah, great question. So like I said, my background is also in planning, like architecture, community engagement, right? There's different surveys and tools that I've used. One of them is called mentimeter.com. And it's basically an online polling system. Right now, you had what was here in terms of Zoom, and that's helpful to see, multiple choice type responses. But they also have options such as a word doodle, right? You can ask a question, and I've done this with my board and with some stakeholders that we worked with in the building community. Give me a reason or name a phrase that tied you to the Houston Land Bank, right? And that gave them the opportunity to respond by saying, they love investment, whether it's the real estate side, they want to, unity, right? It's just those kind of icebreaker feel good questions, and you can literally see in real time people's responses. It was also helpful just in terms of especially when we're talking about some of the data of our sales prices, et cetera, to gauge people's comfortability on what's affordable to them. So definitely Mentimeter and those type of interactive tools are helpful to still engage people and see the results of what people are saying. And then I'll share those results later and definitely use that data to inform me for the next meeting. Or of course, how did you hear about us, right? Was it on our social media? Were you referred by a board member? Definitely I try to create different, I'll just say communication coalitions that can help spread the word to different prospective donors as well, because I recognize that I'm, building up our following, I'm building up our messaging right now, right? So I'm asking for those referrals and those influencers to help use their platforms to share our message as well.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think with that, we may go ahead and wrap today up. So thank you everyone so much for your participation and for your questions. Again, you'll be receiving a link to both the recording and a slide deck that we used today. That follow-up email will come to you in the next few business days. And just thank you so much for attending today. I hope you enjoyed our time with Krista. Thank you, Krista, of course, for presenting. We are so grateful to have your leadership and talent and brilliant insights here. I want to encourage everyone to connect with Krista via LinkedIn, put that online networking to work. And with that, we hope you all are staying safe and healthy. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for all that you do to improve and enrich our communities. And we will see you at our next webinar on April 20th.